What drew me to New Mexico was it felt right. Just needed a place where things were big and wide open and I could think and breathe. Actually, I'll never forget, as I drove into Albuquerque for the first time and saw the layout of the city, I realized I'd dreamed about it for several years. There's something about the light in New Mexico and the stillness and the openness and the freeness that I think captures a lot of people's souls and imaginations. I think once you've been here for a while shooting a movie, I don't think you can just walk away and never come back.
I was a little bit apprehensive about moving out in the middle of the desert because I've always lived near a body of water. I mean, I was raised on the shores of Lake Michigan, lived near the ocean in California, and I thought, oh God, the desert, this is just going to be so bleak. But I found the exact opposite, that it's true, there's a very powerful spirit here. It's physically very beautiful when you're here.
Every night when you walk out of your office, you just stop, take a breath, and you see this vista, and you see the sky that is saying, look, this is the land, this is spectacular.
What draws people here, first of all, look around you. You have like 300 days of sunlight a year. The weather is it never gets too cold. It's beautiful. All these painters have been coming here for generations. I think there's just an artistic bent to the sort of people and the culture of this area.
Between desert, mountains, mesas, everything is in this state. You can make any movie here.
The best thing we have is light and space. And we have a daily magic hour that won't quit.
They're amazed by the sunsets. They're amazed by the quality of light. Especially you get a nice fall day where you get some really nice clouds that are forming in the west and you get the sun coming up from the east, and it's like the perfect lighting that you can absolutely have.
The light and the landscape and all that is certainly wonderful, but the people, the crews that you guys have here are so great.
It's one of the best crews I've ever worked with anywhere. It's a phenomenal crew. It has been a joyous experience, way beyond my expectations. We brought a few key people from New York, and otherwise everybody's from New Mexico. 70 or 80% of our cast is from New Mexico. 90-something% of our crew is local, and it's exceeded all my expectations.
The crews know each other so well, so it's almost like there's a natural shorthand, and they work like a well-oiled machine.
You can really get top-notch crews now. There's a lot of experienced people, and of course they've done so many more movies here that the people have got the experience.
It's a joy. That's all I can say. It is an absolute joy. We have great crews. The quality of our crews equals and surpasses some of those I've been on in Hollywood.
There wouldn't be a world-class crew base in New Mexico if the film industry incentives weren't in place. That's what's brought people here.
I came back to New Mexico because of the film incentives in the industry. I've been able to live here now. I own my own house. I'm a taxpayer. I can stay in New Mexico, which is my home.
Roll sound.
Rolling.
When I started getting involved, there were probably 200 members of Screen Actors Guild. Today there's about 700. And these are professional actors that are getting paid to do their craft.
The Film Production Tax Credit applies to a production company working in New Mexico that submits required records. They must hire New Mexico residents, and that payroll, along with incurred expenses with subcontractors and suppliers, are all subject to New Mexico tax. The state then refunds 25% of those expenses to the production company.
A producer in Hollywood or New York wants to make a movie, and they want to make it as inexpensively as possible. They look down the list of states that offer incentives, and they compare other things besides the pure percentages. Do they have studios available? Is there a trained workforce? Do I have to bring in everything, or is there already stuff there?
We don't come to a place just because of the incentive. We come for many reasons, but the incentive sure makes it easier. And these days, when you're in competition with Michigan, and you're in competition with North Carolina, and you're in competition with Georgia or Louisiana, we don't just budget New Mexico, we budget all those states.
All the studios do that.
They basically have departments that crunch every locale, pluses and minuses in terms of what they may be offering.
If you look at a budget, and a budget is $10 million, is a shoot in Los Angeles, and it can be net 7 in North Carolina or net 6 in New Mexico, that's $1 million. Where's the people writing the check going to say do it?
So they say, okay, let's go to New Mexico. And they come and they spend a lot of money here. And after they spend the money, we account for the money and audit it very closely. And then we perform on our promise to give them the incentive money back. That's why they were here in the first place.
I think I've done 3 or 4 movies here in Santa Fe, and it's probably because, you know, you get more bang for your buck here, you know, and that brings a bunch of movies here.
We have a huge crowd outside, and so we're making arrangements for the people who couldn't get into this theater to go into another theater and watch on a screen over there.
This is the only industry in this state that has its favored status. 25% of all production costs get rebated by the state treasury.
Instead of looking at all the other programs that send $400 million to dirty industries, including oil and gas, potash and coal, this industry has been targeted unfairly.
This program is working, and it's probably one of the most financially beneficial programs for the state of New Mexico. And I think that has to be proven.
You do not get any economic development by spreading tax dollars around like Tinkerbell's pixie dust. We have done too much of that.
What I would like to see from the industry is what Dennis Kintai said. You know, all industries, all businesses should be able to survive independently of the taxpayer.
This idea of it being a subsidy. I don't like that word because I think that's true in certain places, but the program that is in place in New Mexico is bringing more money in than goes out. That's not subsidizing.
This is not the time to target the gold standard film program in the United States.
Do we benefit when the money comes from outside the state? Of course we do. Do I think it's going to completely dry up and blow away? I don't.
We've spent a decade investing in the post-production, in the people behind the camera, all those kids going to high school to learn how to work in this industry. They're here, and that is a huge benefit for us, but it also depends on the financing decisions that these studios make. That's why we need to keep the rebate exactly as it is.
And yet we're at this point where if we do not continue the subsidy, everyone says the industry will go away. So it's like an addiction. It's like being hooked on heroin. We have to keep increasing the doses.
I can imagine what the general public feels when they hear kind of volatile language and making wrong assumptions. Like, if we diminish the rebate, the state will make $25 million. No. It's apples and oranges. It's very different. The $25 million goes away.
You can't just look at what goes out. You have to look at what comes in. In this scenario, we're talking about the tax rebates that go out, but then the jobs, the businesses, all the whole variety, the spectrum of taxes that come back in.
The film industry makes money for thousands of families. And it's, you know, it's really a labor-intense industry.
Okay, let's go in.
The film industry was what it had been for the prior 80, 90 years of the history of filmmaking in the state, which is it was very sporadic. It was cyclical. It depended a lot on the popularity of particular genres that were shooting, particularly westerns at first, and then more into the sci-fi realm. So it was up and down.
The train started to come through here in 1800, and that made it more popular for tourists and people to come and stop and see the village.
The silent film industry came here because of the easy access to the west via the Santa Fe Railroad. Edison sent a cameraman and a producer throughout the Southwest, the West, Mexico, and Asia. Indian Day School was made at Isleta Pueblo in 1897. It's a short documentary. So they came here to make westerns. People went crazy when they saw this at the theater because they had never seen geography before, except in a studio. and they used different camera angles, first time ever, and it just thrilled, people to death. There's that one famous scene where the cowboy points the gun right at the screen, and people in the theater ducked, or they ducked when they'd see a train coming at them.
The first governor that really tried to crank up the film industry in the state and put specific effort in doing that was Governor David Cargo, and that was back in the 60s. That was somewhat of a success back then, but they didn't put together an incentive program like we have. That was more a personal appeal on behalf of the governor to try to expose New Mexico to Hollywood for films other than Westerns.
In 1994, Earth 2 told us that they were going to leave. That was a Spielberg TV series because they had to pay state taxes. And naively believing them, we went to the state legislature, lobbied, and got through a tax exemption from motion picture companies. Nothing happened because our other TV series, Lazarus Man, had left to go to Canada for, at that time, a 15% rebate. So we sat around here for about 4 years before we realized the movies weren't coming back.
We bottomed out in the film industry in New Mexico. We only made 2 movies. And one was called The Unforgettable, and it's a very forgettable movie. And another one called Maniacs with Dennis Hopper, and he didn't like that movie, and it was a bad movie. So we basically didn't make any money with movies in 2000.
2000 was the first bill we passed, which was the Film Finance Act, which a third of the movies that have been shot in New Mexico since we started this whole thing have accessed all or part of their financing through the Film Finance Act.
Governor Richardson's predecessor, Governor Johnson, was really wise when he first instituted the incentives, because what he did was he found a new way to create a taxpayer base. And it wasn't a social welfare program that you equate with Democrats, or it wasn't a fiscal conservative program that you equate with Republicans. What it was how do we grow the potential of our people?
We were breaking a lot of new ground. I mean, it took quite a lot of time. The Tax and Revenue Department was amazing, how involved they were in creating rules and regs. The Speaker of the House has always been right at the forefront. Local 480 was very involved.
Myself, Eric Wett, who at that time was the Speaker's office, Nancy Everett, who was in the Film Commission, passed the 15% rebate bill. 20% 2 years later, 25% a year after that.
Bill Richardson came in and put his own personal political capital, financial capital, and the success of this business in the state is largely due to the fact that so many people have recognized the common benefit to all and have pitched in and worked in earnest to really make this thing happen.
We thought, okay, this is going to be good for the state. But we didn't foresee that 8 years later, 40 other states would have copied us. And we, not in our wildest dreams, thought that we'd be having $1 billion industry here.
The greatest benefit of film incentives in New Mexico, from my perspective, is simply the fact that they're working. The but-for question, is the industry responding to the inducement? The answer appears to be clearly yes.
This over here is the Silverado Building. That was the first set we had on this side of the ranch.
I probably was the first to do 3 movies at the same time. Over here I had Dead or Alive. Down at the other set I had Comanche Moon, which was a miniseries. And then over the hill I had Wild Hogs going. They were all 3 going at the same time. The governor called, wanted to come out, wanted to do some shooting out here. So he saw that I was busy there and here, and he says, "Gee, Mrs. Hughes, you're busy. I see you got here and there." And I said, "You know what, Governor?" I said, "I got one over the hill that you can't see." I said, "I'm doing my part for New Mexico." And he said, "You sure are."
Sometimes there's hundreds, maybe thousands of jobs are created by a single movie project or television project, and that's what it means for your state. Is it puts a lot of people to work. It brings a lot of people here to work.
The first time I was hired to do the Breaking Bad pilot, I sat in a hotel room with a cell phone. This studio did not exist. I didn't know anybody in the state, really. And within 6 weeks, we had a warehouse, we had offices set up, and we were filming with 150 people on salary.
This is a scene Tenorio and Narciso are fighting outside the Longhorn Saloon in the rain. It's a film adaptation of Rudolph Anaya's book. He's a native New Mexican, lives in Santa Rosa. Right now we've got a full-time crew of 135 people. In the last week we have employed anywhere between 100 and 125 extras every day. In terms of day players, we probably have another 15 to 20 that revolve in and out. We're going to spend somewhere around probably $5 million in the next 2 months, and that could go up as high as $7 million, I would guess.
I've worked on projects that have spent anywhere from $4 million to close to $30 million in a very short time. And when we spend $25 million, that's going to go through your economy, not just once. It's going to be paid to someone who has to buy groceries. Now it's going through 2 times. And the person who's getting a wage at that supermarket is going to go out and buy a car, so it's gone through 3 times. And the person who's buying the car is going to have to go out and take a loan, and it's going through 4 times. And sooner or later, our money goes through an economy somewhere 4 to 8 times.
TV shows of the kind I do, we spend $1 million a week.
My husband and I both work full-time in the film industry. My daughter is a SAG member, my son is a SAG member. You know, we own our house here.
The star of my show, the executive producer of my show, the co-stars of my show, all own condos here. They bought here. And so I see a great deal of money staying in New Mexico.
I actually go to the farmer's market every Saturday and buy a bag of the hot green chilies.
The film industry is something you cannot totally quantify. I think many people are trying to quantify it, and God bless them, but there are collateral issues, things that can't be measured. The prestige, the panache, the whole gestalt of having the film industry here to help the tourists, to help the mystique of New Mexico.
We are a voice for small businesses that have benefited from the film industry, and right now we represent over 2,000 employees and over 70 companies, and these are people whose profits have increased 20, 30, 40% because of the film industry.
You can have a big budget film that could spend $1 million plus, you know, in 6 months, which is huge.
I know that 50% of what I generate is generated by the movie industry.
Films and TV productions cover approximately 30 to 40% of what we do a year.
The gains that we've had as a hotel company in the last 4 to 5 years from the film industry have been well over 20,000 room nights.
In 10 days, I have purchased 693 room nights in one hotel, and that's not even my entire crew.
I did a film in Las Cruces, The Burning Plain. We spent 6 months in that town, and I stayed in a hotel for 6 months. I ate dinner out at a restaurant for 6 months. That's spreading the wealth.
I've been in Run for Her Life, and I was in the other one, Friendship. Brothers. About 6 of them I've been in, yes.
Whether you're in the hotel business, car rental, equipment rental, restaurants, suppliers for construction crews, the list goes on.
Jackie Chan came in and filmed here, the Spy Next Door. I know that was a big thing too.
You know, the film company, I appreciate it because they have given income to this bad economy that we have, and it just, I say it's been a blessing.
I began working on films about 30 years ago in New Mexico when some of the first films, Milagro Beanfield War and Convoy and others, I worked as a driver, and I saw a need for equipment, trucks, specialized trucks and things to work in the film business. We're doing a lot more business now in the last 8 or 10 years, or since the incentive package has come along.
We have 8 employees, and we have 25 to 30 service-related businesses that help us do what we're doing, whether it be a carpenter, a plumber, electricians, mechanics, people that clean the trailers.
We affect so much more than the direct employee that you see on the set. Anything from maids at hotels, because we require a lot of people stay in motels, waitresses, busboys, cooks, gas station attendants, tire repairmen, parts and service related facilities.
All these people have people that work for them and families, and they all pay taxes, and they all have property tax, income tax, gross receipts tax.
No one in New Mexico is untouched by this. We touch everybody in the state before we're done.
It seems to me that the trickle-down effect goes a long, long ways.
When you fly 50,000 feet and take a look down at New Mexico, we have oil and gas, we have tourism, we have art, we have some farming, some agricultural, but not a lot. Where's the state going to grow in the future, and where are the jobs going to come?
The film business itself, in the big picture, when it comes to a little community like Carrizosa, we're under 1,000 or right at 1,000 residents. They bring a lot of outside money that goes to each individual business, which turns over several times in the town.
The filming of the Book of Eli in Carrizosa was an eye-opener for people in Lincoln County to the potential, the opportunities that the film industry had.
We saw lots of kids being hired, a lot of painters, a lot of technicians.
The local salvage yard guy was paid for the cars that were supplied. The concrete company was paid for the rubble that was brought in. And 39 of the residents of Carrizosa were hired as extras.
They brought a life back to the town, and they made the town actually become more of a tourist attraction.
People will travel and spend extra time to go visit a location where a film has been made.
When they came to film the Book of Eli here, by redoing all the buildings as they left the town in way better shape than they got here.
When any tourist, any film company, anybody from out of town comes and spends money here, that broadens our tax base. We need to do what we can to keep attracting films to New Mexico.
You know, economic development is all about bringing the variety of jobs and careers to New Mexico so that our kids can stay here and contribute to the economy and grow this pie.
We have 10 or 12,000 people in our education system enrolled in media classes. We offer 4-year major degrees at both big universities in the state. Most all of the higher education outlets in the state of New Mexico offer some kind of media training. All of this is supported by the taxpayers. These are expensive educations we're handing out, and if we drop the ball and don't have a motion picture business for them to get jobs in here, they'll take their expensive education and they will leave.
In middle school, I started skateboarding with my friends, and I was really interested in documenting the tricks that were done, and so other people could see them. I started making a bunch of films, and I made my first full-length skate video, which was about 30 minutes long, about a year ago. It got a lot of people stoked on it.
It's really important to have a native filmmaker in the industry, because the last of our elders, they're not going to be here forever, and they're the only ones who can tell us those stories. They can tell us their grandparents' stories, and when they stop telling their stories, then we have no one to tell it for them.
The Long Walk of the Navajo can be considered one of the greatest injustices in the past 200 years. It was the forced removal of about 8,000 Navajos in 1864. About 2,000 Navajo men, women, and children died of the harsh conditions in the dead of winter, starvation, and being murdered by the soldiers for various reasons.
Film incentives to us equals educational opportunity for kids. So if the incentives aren't there, or the rebates for the industry professionals, then basically, why are our students here learning what they're learning?
The kids that go here have a really unique opportunity to come out of their 4-year high school education with a skill set that's unheard of for a high school graduate in terms of editing knowledge, audio knowledge, equipment knowledge, narrative storytelling knowledge, all of production knowledge, planning, all of that stuff.
That's my goal, is that my kids leave my program ready to go to work. And if they choose to pursue this further, at least they have the basis academically, as well as having an understanding what's involved in the business, because we're out doing it and they know what they're getting themselves into.
It looks better on 2. Now, is yours on 2, Randy?
So you want to make sure you've got a good team with you that can set up while you're in the kitchen having tea.
We saw figures the other day that suggest that the average graduation rate in New Mexico is hovering around 50% for high school kids. In cases where they're enrolled in media classes, the graduation rate is 92%. So it's the best kids and the brightest kids that are enrolled in these classes.
Look at the eyes. Do you see them? The little shiny pin light reflecting in the eyes. This softens up the appearance of the subject. And what we're looking at is the construction site for the ABQ Studios Film and Technology Academy here at Atrisco Heritage Academy High School. Once complete, this facility is going to house a 3,000 square foot production studio, sound labs, a full post-production lab, editing bays, things like that, and we hope live broadcast capabilities so that our students can do hands-on training in an environment that mimics as closely as possible a working production studio.
We had 3 to 10 students actually declared majors in the Creative Media Institute. This is now 4.5 years later, we have 308. We're the fastest growing program on campus, but still we have so many students who want into the program from across the state and now outside the state that we're at critical mass.
We've reached a tipping point, which is pretty exciting. We're right at a place where we have some really tangible full-body crews that we can use for the films.
There we go. All right, is that dolly set up?
Go, guys!
Copy, there at the location, sir.
Roger that. People standing over with the dolly. Get them over here.
Copy. All right, guys, let's move. I'm gaffing.
We're all pretty lucky to actually have such a lot of great films being shot around here, and it's great for our students. It's good for the economy. It's good for the workforce development.
Alamogordo, I got to act in a scene with Sean Penn, so that was really great. Good experience.
It opens up a big opportunity for us because we have the motion capture system and we also have the motion control rig, which is basically a robot camera. And a lot of schools don't have that, even a lot of the really big animation schools you hear of. And we do have a lot of talent. I mean, there's a lot of kids that can do things here that are really good.
We have all of our shooting skills, and we got some good studios, and we got some talented people there, but we're still pretty narrow. And as we broaden out, I think we can become really a mecca for digital media in all aspects rather than just film. I think that's the future of New Mexico. But if we don't really sort of take that momentum and bring all of our talents together onto one thing, sooner or later someone will be in competition with us, and we better be prepared for that.
Hopefully with all the training programs, a lot of the young people that are learning these skills will not have to leave the state to continue working in the industry.
Okay, and when we're coming from the hoist, you know, we're going to hoist her up. There's a torch on the ground where Brujo was at with his clothes and the owl.
I think there's something really special about over here in New Mexico, and I think just in the way that we grew up over here that really inspires good storytelling. My dad was a santero, well, is still a santero. My mother's a weaver and a painter, and so our whole family existence kind of generated from that art and having a vision.
I think a lot of people feel that filmmaking is sort of a glamorous job, and it's not a glamorous job. It's a working class, hard job. It's long hours, it's very intense, and it takes a specific kind of skill that you need to have.
You have to get so involved. There's working in the cold, working in the heat, wind, dust, mud, dirt. It's a hard job, snapping to what you got to do.
One of the most satisfying things for us is hearing the number of stories of people who are now coming back to New Mexico, that they are New Mexicans who are saying, thank you for doing this because I can now come back to my home state and support my family here.
Born and raised, went to school at Santa Fe High, went to study television production at New Mexico State University, and I'm a native boy, made all the way to the top. I've worked in North Carolina, I've worked in Colorado. For a while I lived in Los Angeles and got my union card out in Los Angeles, and but now the majority of my work has all been here in New Mexico.
And I went to school in Boston, and then I moved to California. There was no work here. In 2003, when I came back, we had the program going, and it was clear that that I could be here and be a working creative professional.
When I found out that I could actually work here and live here, I mean, I literally packed my house in 3 days and moved back.
I moved back to New Mexico from California to start my family, and I thought, because I grew up in Taos, and I thought that my career was basically over at that point. But then the film industry just exploded out here.
The industry has grown the whole time I've been, I've started. It's grown drastically. It's been amazing.
It used to be, you'd work a few months here, have a few months off, find something else to do. I've been working full-time since the tax incentives were passed.
The first time in New Mexico that I had a job where I earned a living wage was in film. Before that, I worked really hard as a chef, and the highest I ever got paid was $8 an hour. Film provides an economy here where we all can afford to have a decent life.
My life mantra is to create jobs, and that's what this business is about. It's not about Hollywood making money, it's about jobs.
The New Mexico Film Office jokes that I'm the perfect poster child because I came here knowing pretty much nothing about film, and now I'm, within a few years, able to location manage significant features. When I started, most of my bosses were out of state, and big chunks of the crew were out of state folks. And as time has gone by, it's more and more New Mexican because more and more New Mexicans are qualified.
The whole point of the rebate is to make jobs in New Mexico. If you want New Mexico's money, and you come into the state to make a film, then they want you to spend your money in New Mexico, hire a New Mexico crew.
Out of a crew of about 175, I think we brought in 3 people. And the rest of the crew was from New Mexico. The movie went on to get 9 Emmy nominations, including Best Picture. I think that it shows that the state of New Mexico has matured as a film community enough to support and deliver material on a level that can compete on the world stage.
I learned so much in every show. The state and their program, their training program, allowed me to move up really quickly. I grew up in New Mexico. I came back not having an emphasis to work, just to be home, to be near family, to kind of change, the LA lifestyle. So I was able to start a family, build a house, have a career here.
How do we offer young people a skill that makes them competitive in the workplace? Not just in New Mexico, but in Los Angeles, in New York, in Louisiana. And more importantly, how do we offer them something where they can stay home and grow the future of our state? And I think that's what the incentives do better than anything. They have helped bring people from outside, train the people inside to grow a native industry.
The Institute of American Indian Arts is one of those really profound moments in American history, actually. And I happen to be very fortunate to be one of the first students here at the Institute of American Indian Arts. And introduced into a whole new way of looking at creative expression.
Our dome rotates from 0 degrees flat to 90 degrees horizontal. Never been done before. We beta tested it, and proud to say that the Institute of American Indian Arts here in Santa Fe has truly one of the first of its kind edifices in the world.
We now have a film program here that's certainly as competitive to any other film program in the country.
Films are being produced by Indian people and written by Indian people, directed, acted in, and it's just a matter of time before more and more it starts happening.
The stories are always there, the passion's there, so most of the time you end up making films with your own money. You find people who are willing to work for fry bread and beans and Hawaiian punch, and you work. If it wasn't for the state, I don't think my last film would have been made. I got the Governor's Cup, and I had to put some of my own money into it, yes, but it made a huge difference.
As a writer,
I knew that I was drawing from this wellspring of memory and emotional reality that was first shaped and put into me by cinema. We have to be as savvy and strategic as possible in this moment about economic and environmental sustainability in film. And as an Indigenous filmmaker, I think we're leading the charge in that way. I think that it's a new era in filmmaking and our creative cultural landscape.
Santa Fe Studios has been master planned to be a very collegiate campus environment. The vision is to have an ecosystem of filmmakers through all phases of production, from pre, principal, and post, using the examples of the creative clusters of Silicon Valley, Hollywood, which are global leaders. We know that for creative people, the best thing to do is to create a conducive environment for the entire creative process.
The state needs to really start paying attention to the businesses that are investing in buildings and infrastructure. There may be states that have more and better incentives that draw business away from us, but if we have the infrastructure here to service productions and to produce our own content, then the industry's not going to die on the vine.
So I've effectively come out here to New Mexico to set up a visual effects facility due to the fact that there are tax incentives in this state. That's what brought me out here. It's also a beautiful place to live. It allows me to get out of Los Angeles. There was a talent pool that I could draw from in hiring artists, which is also very important because as soon as I get a larger project, I'm going to need 10 to 15 people working on the project with me.
Pictures up.
The tax incentives will bring in a much greater amount of work than I'm going to get in Los Angeles.
Marvel, who is shooting the Avengers here, is the largest production going on in the United States right now. And I think that says a lot for New Mexico, and it says a lot for the studio. And there's a number of factors that went into that decision, including the size of our stages, and just as important, the crews that were available. The new administration came in who was uncertain to whether there was any benefit to the film incentive. So there was a lot of questions being asked. The old administration who brought in the incentive was not there to respond. So there was quite a bit of confusion.
If we are not prepared to justify ourselves to the people every year, these are the people who's represented us, and if we can't justify ourselves, don't give me the money. We're not a charity case. We don't need a handout. What we need is a recognition that we're making money from New Mexico and putting a cap. I hate the word cap because you're not capping the money, you're capping people's ambitions, you're capping people's opportunities.
The film and media industry exists in New Mexico on the magnitude that it does because of the globally top-tier incentives that New Mexico has had.
The most important thing for us is that there continues to be cash injections from outside sources, whether that be private equity or studios, but that those continue to come so that we can continue to build our infrastructure. If anyone feels that the incentive is going to disappear in a year or 2 years, they're not going to spend the money.
If the inducement were to go away, I think the film industry goes away, at least in large part, and commensurately so goes the jobs that are currently available to New Mexicans in the industry.
With the way that this business is now and with all the other places offering incentives, if there's even a question, I think, and they can do it somewhere else, then they go there. And it's jobs lost, it's the local economies that get hurt by it. I mean, we need every angle, we need every edge we can.
I would think that if the incentives are done away with or cut back, then there'll be less movies and then the crew they'll go away. And I'm told that the change happens really fast.
I think it would be a great tragedy if it went away. And honestly, if it went away, I'd have to move.
If the film incentives evaporate, I'll probably have to move out of the state and try and make my own movies and work on movies in Louisiana or somewhere else.
When they go, I'll have to go. I mean, there will be no work for me here. There's not going to be films to act on or even audition for.
I owe it
to myself to keep chasing this dream. I mean, it's been going so great, and I love New Mexico. I don't want to leave it, but yeah, I definitely would if it was to all go away.
The Milken Institute in California made a study last July that for every movie job that's lost, 2.5 other jobs disappear as well. That's striking. That's not an economic multiplier, it's an employment multiplier. So every job in the movie business represents 3.5 jobs in the general economy.
I would have to lay off half of my staff, if not more, if I lose the movie business.
We would probably have to lay off, drivers, shop personnel, counter people, and, possibly sales force.
Our stuff is on wheels and we can roll it out to other places. And like we used to do, we did quite a bit of business out of state, and I suppose we could continue doing some business out of state. It won't be like being home and being based here, but it probably wouldn't be the end of the world for us. For some people, it will be the end of their career in the film business.
New Mexico was the first state in the Union to have a film office as part of the state government. So there's been a lot of forward thinking in our state.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. The digital arts make up 9% of the world GDP, okay? It's huge, that much smaller than agriculture. It cannot be ignored.
I'm hoping that our next governor will have that vision and see what a clean industry it is, and it really, how many people it really employs the natives here in New Mexico.
If we tell stories that people want to watch, if we have compelling imagery, compelling stuff that we're sending out of the state that there's a demand for, then the incentive is not the only thing keeping the industry going.
The film industry in New Mexico, through the support of the state and the rebate program and the film technician training program, which was a big part of that sort of groundwork has created an opportunity for filmmakers like us to do smaller independent films and then sort of get roots and wings. They gave us the roots, and now we gotta kind of make it fly for ourselves, and we're gonna have to figure out how to make it in a really tough and competitive industry.
There's a community that's grown here that is very into it and talented and friendly. I think if you want to make an indie movie, and even if you don't know anybody, you could gather people here to help you and actually make this happen.
Well, we just released a film called Send, which is a 27-minute apocalyptic webcam video that released through Vimeo and Facebook, kind of an online platform release, which I think in one day it had 6,500 views. I have a long filmmaking background since I was 12, making short films, and I went to film school and made a lot of short films there. But I was really trying to capitalize on the idea that you need an audience as a filmmaker, and online is a great opportunity for that audience.
There's a sense of community here in the film industry that you don't have out there, and it's like, you work on a movie and you give it your all and you get to work again. It's kind of nice that you reap what you sow here.
When Jeff came in about Crazy Heart, Jeff kind of made me think in 3D, which is, it was much more in depth.
I worked with Tara on Crazy Heart, which was a wonderful experience for me.
We took his character, we took Bad Blake, and we really broke him down and said, okay, what has this guy been through and where has he been? And
the subtlety of it, you don't want to notice the makeup, you just want it to, be part of the character.
She was on my movie, actually, the day that she didn't show up for work, and I asked Rob to call John, and I called her brother.
I had a series of mini strokes and some bleeding in the left side of my brain and kidney failure. So prognosis was not good. They told my family basically that, I wasn't going to make it.
Early on, we were actually thinking about doing an event for her, a benefit
for her, and she just didn't want to have any part of it.
When I heard what happened to her, it was just so shocking, and it made me want to help her out in some sort of way.
So when Jeff got involved, the request came to me to put the band back together.
We just did it, and we had a lot of fun. One of the nice byproducts of the whole thing was getting to play with some wonderful local musicians. Had a fun time. Brent, I guess you've been prepping on the stuff, so you're up to speed. I've been working on it. People who make movies really we consider each other a family, being all in it together, and it certainly takes a family to make a movie. You need all those people working together.
Thank you so much for coming out and supporting us. And just let you know that there really are no words to describe the gratitude that I have for my film family. And that's exactly what they are, they're family. They saved my life in the most literal way.
This ain't no place to fall behind. Pick up your crazy heart, give it one more try.
I feel Made in New Mexico really means that it's got roots, and that it's rooted in a place of deep culture, deep history, deep tradition, and something that's real.
There's an enthusiasm for filmmaking out here that is infectious, and it has gotten me excited to make movies again.
In Spanish, the word is orgullo, and that's pride. And so that's what it is. It's pride of being a New Mexican.
I'm from New Mexico, okay? And my entire life, whenever I've traveled anywhere, everyone says, why do you live in New Mexico? I always say it's the food and the air. And once you have it, you can't go back, okay? As I've taken my company global, I've been able to say, well, it's one of the richest production markets in the country. Of course I'm in New Mexico.
I have a vested interest in the success of the movie business in New Mexico. I want my community to be successful, safe, dynamic. I really believe that of the industries that can exist in this state, the movie business is one of the greatest industries ever.
It's been really great for everyone here. We've trained crews, we've put a lot of people to work, we've now have a lot of New Mexico filmmakers making movies and getting involved, and I think it's just, aside from the training and all of that, I think it's an amazing thing that we've done here.
It's time to grow. This is a time when we need to be strong in our will to move forward with a vision and a dream that literally is going to be an economic power here in this state.